Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Every Day is Saturday. Big disclaimer on that, where this is a far pre-record. And one of the parts of our rebrand is possibly a new name. So that name may not even make any sense, but I don't have a new name for the podcast. So as of right now, welcome back to another episode of Every Day is Saturday. I'm your host, Brad Gotto. Don't have a co-host with me today. Also part of the rebrand coming up. But we wanted to get this recording done because this has been in kind of the plans for a very long time. And I've got some very special guests with me here today that I asked to share their story quite a while back. They've since decided to leave the state of Minnesota and leave me, but they happened to be here. And so I had to grab them while they were here. And I'm super excited to record this, knowing full well it's not going to come out for a couple of months. But we do have some guests with us today. But again, welcome back to another episode of Every Day is Saturday. Sometimes it's been our goal when we launched this podcast to be able to share stories of people and families that we have the opportunity to partner with and work with that are living their life in a meaningful way. Stories that are just worth sharing. Because as we've talked about multiple times on this podcast, finding your identity in life is super important, whether you're a middle schooler trying to figure out who you are, or another big transition or shift in life is into retirement, because a lot of us find identities in our jobs and kind of that phase of life. And so I love being able to bring stories of people that I think are doing a really good job of living their life with purpose, with intention, and are finding kind of that meaning in their nearing or in retirement years. And so I have the pleasure of introducing all of you to, I would say, friends of mine, but also clients of mine, Beth and Rob Rice. They're here with us today. So thanks for joining us on the podcast, guys.
Good to be here.
Yes, absolutely.
So I asked them to join, and I'm not going to share their story for them, but like I said, because I think they're doing a really good job of putting a lot of thought and intention into why they're living their life the way that they are. And so that I don't tell your story and keep talking, which I have a tendency to do, one of the things that I think is different about you guys more than most, and I'm not saying nobody does this, but generally speaking, one of the things that I think differentiates you guys is you know what your why is. It's much easier to make decisions in life if you kind of know at your core the outcomes that you're chasing, and makes it a lot easier to define success or failure. And so that's where I want to start with you guys. Is let's start with kind of an intro, a little bit of your story, who you are as people, your family, that kind of stuff. Obviously, this is a financial podcast, so maybe working, not working, some of that background. But then we're going to get into that why and kind of what defines and how you guys make decisions. But let's start with the story.
Okay. Well, we're Beth and Rob Rice. We lived in the Minneapolis area for more than 3 decades. I actually grew up in outstate Minnesota, went to Chicago for a couple of years, which is where I met Rob.
What's the definition of outstate Minnesota?
Non-metro area.
Okay.
So, yeah. And so we came back here, raised our family here in the Minnetonka, Excelsior, Shorewood area. And just in the last couple of years have sensed a new vision for our next season of life. And that vision was really around the fact that our 3 kids now live in Chicagoland and Madison, 2 of which are married, and our first grandchild that we just had in January. And so Sarah, our oldest, and her husband Ian have little Ellie, Kate, and then we have Adam and Amy in the Chicago area and Matt in Madison. And so all 3 of our kids went to Wheaton College in Chicagoland, and so stayed in that area or their Madison area. So we have been commuting for about 10 years to see them, and kind of decided that we wanted to, part of our vision was to have a place that was going to allow us to spend more time with them, to be more proximate to them. So that was part of the component, but we also wanted to find a spot where we could be more active year round. And, in the course of that, we wanted to just have spaces where we could build memories with our kids and families and friends, and also simplify. So those were sort of the key components of our vision. And so we ended up in the last year, long story short, selling our Minnesota home, buying a condo in Naples, Florida, and Rob can tell you a little bit of the Naples story, and then buying a home in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, so that we're within an hour and a half of each of our kids. So
I'm going to pause you real quick because there's a lot to unpack there. And I just want to back you up just for a second, because there's that real estate story. I have a lot of follow-up questions on. I've had the chance to be a part of it. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of challenges over the last couple of years. But backing up, Beth, and same question for you, Rob. So, are you retired? Not yet retired? If you are retired, what did you retire from? Kind of talk to us a little bit about your careers.
Yeah, so I'll jump in here. I'm an actuary by trade, which means I do a lot of work with mathematics and probabilities. Most of my I'm a consultant in that space, which means I work with large organizations to help them analyze their retirement systems. That's a mouthful, but bottom line is large organizations have complex problems and issues that they face, and we try to help them as a third party. I'm still actively working full time. Brad has been reminding me that perhaps I should not work for money. I wouldn't need to necessarily, but it's been a really rewarding career for me. So I'm continuing to work full time, but looking to phase down, meaning this coming winter, I'll be going to 3 days, spending more time with volunteer organizations, actuarial groups, and so on. And looking forward to what that inflection point and that change might mean. Working toward a full retirement, probably something like a year after that. But that's
I'll believe it when I see it. I like the fact that you have it out there, but I don't believe you.
I know, because you've been reminding us for several years that it would be wise to think about your next.
Well, and part of that goes to your why, which we're going to get to in just a little bit. How about you, Beth?
Yeah, so my background is I actually began my career as an actuary, and that's where I met Rob, but had always had a vision to go to law school. So I came back to the University of Minnesota and went to law school, during which time we got married. And then I practiced law for 15 years with a firm called Frederickson and Byron in downtown Minneapolis in the corporate and securities area, which I loved. But then in having 3 kids and trying to work part-time and balance all of that, I ultimately left the firm environment, did some project-based work for several years, and really shifted my corporate interest to more of the nonprofit interest, and served a lot of nonprofit clients, served on some boards, that kind of thing. So I've been doing project-based work, at various levels through even this last June. But since then, I've been really tailoring down and leaving space for some other things.
So if you're paying attention at home and you're in financial services at all, or have any experience as a financial advisor, what they just told you is their backgrounds are both as actuaries and one of them is a lawyer. So if you're looking for, the worst client ever to bring on board that's going to look at every number possible, I'm just kidding. I literally, though, when I met you guys and you told me what you did, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be very interesting and very hard for me. It's been the exact opposite. You guys are breath of fresh air as clients, but there's just a joke in our industry. Like there's certain careers you just got to really watch out for. Actuaries, engineers, lawyers, they all have like a barrier to entry that's much, much higher than most. But you guys are breaking those molds for us here at Fiat. And so I greatly appreciate that. So, Beth, when I had the opportunity to meet you, you were kind of in that phase of your career, in law, working in that nonprofit space and doing a lot of work on boards. I'm curious, because of that transition for you, why did you go from kind of that corporate space to that nonprofit space, and why was that rewarding?
I could transfer the skills from my corporate work and just saw such a need in the nonprofit world. And when you serve on nonprofit boards, you see how resource poor they are, and having the legal background to kind of share with a board, and not to become their lawyer, but to spot the issues and be able to sort of shepherd some things along just was meaningful. And there were organizations that meant a lot to us: our church, our kids' Christian schools, and some other local nonprofit, primarily Christian boards. And so there just really felt like I was also part of kingdom work there.
Which is awesome. And that's a great segue into your why. So before we kind of tell the story of what you've done recently and the moves that you've made and kind of your vision for the future in this new phase of life, talk to me a little bit about, because I feel like you guys have been very intentional about why you make the decisions that you do. And so what is driving kind of the outcomes that you're seeking in life?
Well, I would say several things were driving our why. First and foremost, we want to be very intentional and very proximate with our children. And as Beth said earlier, our kids are now sort of landing appear to be staying in the Chicagoland area and Wisconsin. And so first thought was, let's try to be closer to them, more proximate, so we can do simple things with them, like a dance recital or a Sunday afternoon dinner or
Yeah.
something like that. So number one was to be proximate. Number two was also to be very active. For those that are listening that live in colder climates, you know that sometimes in the winter it's harder to be active. So we would tend to, come home, push the garage door opener, get in, close the door, get in the house, stay warm. It's hard to get out and to be as active as we'd like to be. So that was another big part of it, was to find a situation where we could be more active, especially in the winter months.
Yep.
So those are some of the big drivers. Beth, do you want to talk about other aspects of or why?
Yeah, we also just felt a need to simplify. We had a bigger home than we needed, more stuff than we needed. And so we thought this is an opportunity to kind of make a shift and not leave that burden for the kids. And in some ways, it would have been easier to stay because we had an established church community, lots of family and friends, extended family around. But we really felt like God had something new for us. And like we said, really wanted to be more available to our kids and just enjoy some impromptu things with them. But yeah, just the idea of investing in our long-term health too, and just seeing what a difference that makes, and being active and keeping strong. And hopefully that will help us live better longer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Part of what I love about your story is most people don't take the time to figure out if the decisions that they're making in life, especially with like their money, are guided towards their values, or that the decisions that they're making are actually moving towards or seeking out their long-term outcomes that they want in life. And I feel like you guys took the time to sit back and think, okay, what do we want for the rest of our life? And then kind of reverse engineer what that might look like down to certain practical decisions, like, well, where are we going to live? But also just leaving the door open to the possibility that might not be the house you've been in for 3 decades. And how rewarding that can be. As human beings, we don't love change, right? It's a scientific fact that the human body doesn't like change. And so we kind of get stuck in ruts sometimes. And you guys really kind of were super intentional. In fact, I feel like some of that started 3 or 4 years ago. You guys made a pretty significant trip kind of seeking some of this out. Can you talk a little bit about kind of after you cast a little bit of a vision for your life, that trip that you guys took in 2021?
Yeah, so I'll take a stab at this, Beth, and you'll have more of the detail to add. But Brad, what you're referring to is there was a time when we began to search very deliberately to learn more about other places that we might consider living,
Mm-hmm.
and also to intersect with and learn from the experience of others that had done similar before us. So we took trips to places that might be of interest to us as a possible additional or different living place. So it included places in Tennessee, in Arizona, in Colorado, et cetera, and Florida. And in each instance, we're intersecting with people who we knew recently retired, asked them, what's it like? Now that you've actually been retired, how does it feel?
Yeah.
Are there any tips that you could give to us as those who are approaching that sort of same concept? So in doing so, we were able to fine tune some of our thinking about which parts of the country, along with attributes or things that we're seeing in our friends who are retired, or at least partially retired, what that felt to them, and elements that they felt might be helpful to consider. The thing that we did here a lot is land in a place that you love, and then secondly, make sure you have a lot of things that you love to do in that area, and not just assume you're going to stop working and that's the end of it.
So you ended up on, as far as like, we'll talk more about this. There's the Wisconsin home, which makes sense with, your kids, and that's all kind of about family, right? But then there's also the Naples home. So like when you're talking about being active and, finding things to do, of all the places that you visited, you talked about like Nashville, Asheville, Scottsdale, Sarasota, Siesta Key, Naples, and maybe there's more than that. Why Naples?
So yeah, I'll offer an answer here, just because I think a lot of where we landed has to do with my history, and the bottom line is that my grandmother, on my mother's side, she worked at a dress shop, and they had 2 locations. and they were very customer intimate, meaning they knew their customers. They would cater to their needs, and they would buy things knowing that so-and-so might like this. It was a sort of a high society, big hat, fancy dress, wedding, prom kind of place, right? I mean, seriously. So they had two locations, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Naples, Florida. And the reason they chose Naples, Florida is because they learned that many of their clients in the winter would go down to spend time in Naples. So as a child, I spent parts of most years going to Naples for a spring break concept, staying with my grandmother. And it just had, for me, a lot of very positive, joyful moments.
Sure.
And so there's a soft spot in my heart for Naples, Florida. Quite frankly, it's not the cheapest place to buy or to live in, but at the end of the day, God lined things up in a way that we're able to live in a place that we love, that we can achieve parts of the vision that we just talked about. And even though there's lots of other great places that our listeners might think are even better, for us, it was rapidly kept coming back toward Naples, Florida. Beth, did you have any other comments on that?
I would just say, yes, we kept coming back to Naples as we looked at other things. And even when we were on trips over the last decade, if we were in the Florida area, we would always spend a couple days in Naples. So we always had a heart for that region, but we really fell in love with the space that we have there now and the opportunities around it. So we live in a 3-bedroom condo. We wanted enough space for our kids to come visit. It's got a pool, very handy, and we're a 10 to 12 minute walk to the beach, which was important to us. We wanted access to the beach. I do a lot of morning walks on the beach, a lot of nice, quiet, reflective time, prayer time in that time. And then we usually go down in the evening and watch the sunset. So to be 10 to 12 minutes away from that and have access to that is just a gift. And we get the beauty of God's creation every morning, every evening. And just the bright blue sky in January, that's the thing I remember when we first moved there, and just going out the door and walking down the sidewalk toward the beach, and just seeing the white skyscrapers against the bright blue sky. And it's just good for the soul. So we just love the lifestyle that we can have there, and also having our family and friends visit and have meaningful time there and give them a respite as well. So those are some of the reasons around that.
I love that you're kind of recreating the opportunity for your kids and now the start of grandchildren that you had, when you were growing up, Rob. That's really cool. And it just happens to be in a really cool area. I love how you're describing the sky in January too, and just thinking about what the sky looks like in Minnesota in January. It's not that at all. That is assuming you get outside in the 4 hours that the sun's actually up here in January.
And Brad, we're also finding, the beauty of that place is also sort of reflected indirectly through the Wisconsin place we have, which is also wonderful and beautiful at the right time of year, we find. And again, for listeners, some people would love winter and would choose to stay in a place like that all year. For us, our choice is to split our time in that way between the two locations. But boy, living in southern Wisconsin is also just beautiful and wonderful. And the weather has been just great this past summer here as we're recording in September. But it's been a wonderful, another place for us to live. It brings us a lot of joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the aspects of that is Geneva Lake. We're just 5 or 6 blocks from Geneva Lake. Again, an opportunity to walk down there. And it has a lakeshore path that you can walk around that's available to the public. And so you get to walk along all of these beautiful homes and gardens. And so again, it's bringing that beauty in and exercise, and just good for the soul.
Yeah. So let's practically talk about some of these moves that you've made. For some of the listeners, it seems daunting. The idea of like, I'm going to sell my home and I'm going to go buy 2 different homes in states that I've never lived in before. There's a lot that takes a lot of work. I mean, you guys did a lot of work. It's a lot of work just to sell a house, and the concept of moving or downsizing or like getting rid of stuff, and then purchasing 2 properties in different states. And then on top of that, changing residency out of the state of Minnesota into a different state. Can you give practical advice, some of the learnings that you've had over the last couple of years to the listeners of, hey, now that I've done it, here's some things I would absolutely do over again. And I think we did right. And maybe a thing or two that you're like, looking back on it, maybe we should have done this different.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we really found was helpful is we embraced each other's giftings. And so Rob's really good at visualizing space and packing all of that. And I'm better at prepping and planning and list making and all of that kind of thing. And but we would come to inflection points where we weren't really sure if the vision was going to play out like we thought, and timing was off or whatever. And we really relied on God to just guide and direct us and give us the faith to take the next step, and just allow him to work in it. And even that kind of displayed how differently we work. Rob really likes to have a plan and then follow it, and sort of the actuarial side. And I'm more, let's have a vision, let's explore, let's see where this lands. And as we take steps, and let God direct and redirect. And so there was the interplay of that. So for example, we listed our Minnesota home for sale last July of 2023. It didn't sell, so we took it off in October. But we continued to look in Florida, and then found a place that really met our criteria. And even though it was out of order, we felt led to go ahead and buy that in faith. And then within a month of signing that purchase agreement, we did receive an offer on our Minnesota home, even while it was off the market. So God provided in a big way there to allow us to kind of move forward on our vision a little more quickly. Whereas originally Rob was like, well, I guess we're going to wait and sell our house in the spring, because that's just the order you do things in. So, and so we just, kind of went step by step, and that's the thing. It's big and it can be daunting, but we just thought we're just going to keep moving forward and see where God leads, and try not to hold too tightly to any particular order or even, steps that we thought should happen, and just let it unfold. As Rob's grandma, also the Naples grandma, would always say, let it form a pattern. So we were just kind of letting it do that.
I would add too that someone recently told us that the opposite of anxiety is peace, a true sense of shalom peace, not just, oh, I'm kind of okay with it, but I'm actually at peace with this situation or this concept. And so how does one achieve that peace? And her advice to us was, it's partnership. The opposite, or the way that you can combat anxiety. And Brad, in your question, I just think a lot of our listeners may wonder, oh my goodness, that would make me anxious. There's so many steps, so many things to do. The opposite of anxiety is achieved through partnership. And so, number one, partnership with our God, and seeking his wisdom and his advice. Part of his scripture talks about Matthew 6:33, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these other things, like what to wear, what to eat, what to drink, they'll be given to you as well. So partnership with our God, partnership with one another. As Beth said, we each bring different skills to this relationship. Yeah. And I think that's also the beauty of what God does in relationships. He doesn't put typically two identical people together. So she has skills that I love and need, and I hope she feels the same. So partnership with one another, partnership with groups like Fiat, to free us up to not be anxious about how we're spending our money, to have a plan. For me as an actuary, I like to see the long-term implications of things. And Fiat has been really great at partnering with us to see the long-term implications of choices that we might be making now. Yeah. And without that kind of sense of partnership and peace, I think we would move more slowly or more hesitantly. And then finally, partnership, like with our realtor who was instrumental in helping us see the long-term vision, things that might be needed to be done in the home in order to increase the sale price and things like that. So relying on experts in order to reduce that anxiety has been a big theme for us.
I love that. I had no idea that's where you were going to go there. But wherever you're weak, somebody else is strong, right? And so at any phase of life, no matter what decisions you're making, if you don't feel equipped to make that decision or don't want to make that decision on your own, there's always somebody out there that could help, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a spouse. Obviously you talked a lot about your faith, and I share that faith. And so that's a big one for me too, partnering there. But even just on a practical level, whether it's, you talked about your realtor, which seems like, an obvious thing that if I'm going to buy a house, I have to have a realtor. But if you have a good realtor that can help bring peace to the decision, help you understand, again, as an actuary, Rob, self-described, need to know details and understand like something is, you can get really anxious about something as simple as an inspection of a home or, something that comes up and am I buying a house that's actually structurally sound? If you're going to buy in Naples, of course, you're like, if I were you, I'd be like, well, are we going to survive a hurricane? I've never lived where hurricanes are, that kind of stuff. And so those partnerships become super important. Very good point. I appreciate you bringing that out. So talk a little bit over the last couple of years about the impact some of these decisions have made on you, maybe how they've changed you, and maybe a little bit about what you're looking forward to now that, essentially, you kind of changed the playbook, right? Like everything is quite a bit different. And I know you're probably still finding your footing in some of that.
So Beth, I want to start because I think you could talk more about the vision of how it's beginning to unfold for us. But for me, Red, in answer to your question, I would say, in part, I've learned to live more simply, and meaning to get rid of the stuff, or a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
We have downsized dramatically, reduced clutter in our lives, living more intentionally, both in terms of what we keep and how we spend our time. So the simplicity bit is very important for me as a learning. I would also say that in addition to the simplicity, it's a process of being willing to take small, reasonable steps, even though I can't see where it might lead. So for example, let's just explore a little bit in these various cities of where we might live. Let's learn a little bit about how people have felt about retiring. Let's learn a little bit more about Naples, et cetera. To take small steps in faith to see what you learn and then to build from that. And by the way, that Beth is really good at that. I'm not. And so she would encourage me, it'll be okay. I like to kind of have the whole plan mapped out, and that it really is difficult to therefore make any progress. And so I've learned through Beth and others to be more okay with the ambiguity of where this could lead. Just take one small step at a time. So that for me there's some learnings. And Beth, you want to talk more about sort of how we're seeing it play out now in our lives and how it's different?
Yeah. So just the summer being in Lake Geneva and closer to the kids, it has allowed, some Sunday dinners, both with just our immediate family and then with some extended family. And so that's just a beautiful thing. And then we can all walk the 5-6 blocks down to the water. There's a little dip in the bay ice cream along the way. It's just a fun little thing that we can do together. Again, the ability to be active in both locations, walking particularly, but we've joined other, avenues of activity as well. We've done some pickleball and swimming and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, just the time with family has really played out. For example, just this last Monday, I just drove down to Elgin, where my daughter and son-in-law and Ellie Kate live, and was able to spend the day with them. And we've seen, as everybody knows that has a grandchild, but every week they change. And so this week she began to clap and she's giggling, and just really, really fun to spend that unscripted time with them. So we're definitely seeing both the time with family and the activity level. And we've definitely simplified. And I think it's caused us to rethink systems in our home and what's going to serve us best. And, I just have to echo what Rob said earlier too, in terms of what fiat, in the ways that fiat helped us along the way. And really, I think we had pieces of the foundation, financial, tax, insurance, estate planning, that kind of thing, but fiat really helped us put it together in a more integrated way to accomplish this and to really challenge some of our thinking of how we thought things should play out financially and that kind of thing, and expose some of those areas that maybe needed a little bit more consideration. So yeah, we really appreciate the work we've done with fiat along the way.
Yeah, even read practical things, which you may recall, there were times in this journey where we needed a little more cash flow to cover this or that. And like, where would be the most logical place to try to free up some cash? And those are straightforward, simple questions, but there often are 3, 4, 5 different sources. And so you and others at Fiat would help us kind of think through strategically something as simple as that, along with more complicated matters along the way.
And the other thing I would add is, one of the toughest things is leaving your relationships. And so we've come back a few times to Minnesota, which has helped with the transition, but we're also just open to why did God place us in these two new locations, and what people are we going to meet there? And, we believe that we are blessed and we are so grateful for all of this, but we're not blessed just for our comfort, but to bless others. And so what's that going to look like? Not just within our family and extended family, but friends we've already met and friends we will soon meet.
So with the way that it's all starting to play out, what are you most looking forward to in this kind of new phase of life? Call it the next 5 to 10 years.
I would say being active and more physically healthy and emotionally healthy. Emotionally healthy by connecting much more with our direct family, and as Beth said, with people we haven't met yet.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to the people that God wants us to meet in each of these little communities that we haven't yet bumped into. Also, just really the blessing of seeing someone else being able to enjoy the home that we lived in for so long. It's too much home for us, so it brings us joy to see someone else coming in and having that opportunity. Beth, how about you?
And I would just add that we're already starting to appreciate the fact that we are living a little slower paced lifestyle, and both simplifying our home and that kind of thing, but also just in what we're adding to our schedules, because it's all new now. So you can be a little more intentional about your yeses and your nos. And as you're in your career phases and raising kids, it's busy and there's oftentimes not as much margin as you'd like. And so just the ability to slow down and be more present in whatever you're doing, and take care of yourself a little bit better than maybe you're able to in some of those faster paced years.
Yeah, I love all of it. It's been very fun to watch you guys over the last couple of years, watch how you've made decisions, the amount of time and thought you've put into those decisions. And like I said at the beginning, just kind of coming back to the core of why you ended up where you did. And the fact that you had a why, it was very intentional. And to be a small part of that and to be able to watch it play out, it's been special for us. I mean, this is literally why there's not a lot of things in life I do for very long. I love change. I'm like, I'm not one of those people that hates change. And so this career, the reason it's still fun for me to get up every single day is because I get to watch light bulbs go off from time to time. And it's been super fun to watch your journey over the last couple of years. And quite frankly, I just can't wait to see how it all plays out.
And Brad, it has been very helpful to have those healthy proddings, open questions from you and staff about, have you thought about it another way?
Yeah.
And there's real value in that for us. Otherwise, we get stuck on our own version of thinking and not to be politely challenged on things. So, including how long to work and why do you work? For what purpose do you work? What are you trying to achieve? So you've helped tease out a lot of what we've talked about in today's podcast.
And I would just add that I think all of the other things I listed as in terms of the benefits that DED has brought, what we probably most appreciate is that you appreciate us as people, as you're just talking about now, and you care about us meeting our vision and living out the life that we feel led to live out and desire to live out. So that relationship component of our relationship with you has been a huge blessing.
Super kind words. I didn't have you on the podcast to be a commercial for Fiat by any stretch of the imagination, but I appreciate the kind words. And I would just say this, that whether you're working with an advisor that's, whether you're working with us or you're working with a different advisor, just make sure, going back to what you said earlier, Rob, which I'll tell you again, I love, like, make sure it's a partnership. That in any good partnership, that they're bringing something to the table that's above and beyond maybe what you have to bring to the table, and that partnership is bringing you into a further kind of vision for your life. It's very little. I hate to admit this, but it's true. As financial advisors, very, very, very little of the value we can bring is beating the stock market. In fact, I would argue zero, because the average advisor doesn't beat the stock market. The average mutual fund doesn't beat the stock market. The average hedge fund goes under, even though the ones that really, really do well crush the stock market. The true value of an advisor is having a partner that can help you think through things, see the diamond from a different angle, and to help drive some of this vision that we've been talking about. And like I said, it's just been super fun with you guys being able to do that, because not only are you living some of that stuff out, but you allow us to have those conversations with you. You allow us to challenge you. And it's just been great. It's been a partnership as I see it. And that's why it's been so fun over the last couple of years. And I wanted you to be able to tell your story. And so who knows, maybe 5 years from now, I'm going to have you back and you can kind of give us an all update of how it's playing out.
You bet.
That's good.
Well, thank you for taking the time. I know that you're only in Minnesota for a little bit, because obviously you don't even live here anymore. But yeah, you're on location with me here at the Fiat office. And so I greatly appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here and share a little bit of your story. I know for a fact it's going to impact somebody. Like there's a reason that I've had the feeling that I wanted you guys to share your story for a while. And I know it's because it's already impacted me. It's going to impact somebody else. And so that's also cool to think about. So again, thank you for taking the time out of your day.
You're welcome.
Our pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of whatever our podcast is called these days. Greatly appreciate you joining us. And as always, if you want more information on what we do here at Fiat Wealth Management, you can find all of that information at our website. That is not changing. That is fiatwm.com. That's fiatwm.com. We will see you all back on the next episode.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to click the subscribe button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Fiat Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.